Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, Barbara and Peter Gattermeyer, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly in our topics this week. Gun control remains a shot in the dark. Some Kansans taking a shot at a third party. And a new report may be a shot in the arm for Kansas school finance. Plus, of course, roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and take a look at an effort to bring a new party to the ballot in Kansas for the 2018 elections. The plan is to attract voters who are unhappy with the Democratic Party or the GOP or both, who want another option. The project to provide that new choice is called the Party of the Center. Here to talk about it is one of the organizers, Scott Morgan. A quick historical note, Scott's dad, the late Ray Morgan, was a well-known political reporter and columnist in Kansas City and was part of the panel when Ruckus premiered on KCPT in 1995. Scott Morgan, welcome to Ruckus. It's like following in a family tradition for you.
It's kind of frightening.
So let's see, you're a businessman or have been a businessman. You've run for office, been elected, been defeated. What has prompted you to get, well, and I should add, you've been a lifelong Republican, I assume, up until now. You worked for Senators Dole and Kassebaum in Washington. So what in the world has forced you to get so involved with this new idea, this new party?
Well, it was not easy. I'm a fifth-generation Republican, actually. Family moved here in 1856 to Kansas. So it didn't come easy, and it was a process, and everybody says pendulum goes back and forth, this too shall pass, those kinds of things. And really what it was a realization that this isn't who we are, at least in our viewpoint, the group that was trying to organize.
Isn't who Republicans are?
Well, they are not what they used to be. They used to be, there was room within the Republican Party for people. I worked in Washington for Senators Kassebaum and Dole. Those two disagreed on some fundamental issues, or at least issues that are viewed as fundamental today, such as abortion and guns. But they agreed on 99% of the other things and worked closely together for Kansans. The Senate I worked in had a Republican Party with liberal, conservative, and moderate members. Democrats had liberal, conservative, and moderate members. They were big tent parties that had some philosophical differences, but the voters in the country had their voice heard. That no longer is the case. You've got a zero-sum game. Republicans have become the shell over on the far right. Democrats are rapidly going that way on the left. And there's this vast unserved market of voters in the middle. And we thought, the time has come.
But what's the Party of the Center going to stand for beyond civility?
Well, and and civility is important, and to some extent we get shoehorned into what parties have become, and we have to say, well, how are you going to be like them? We're going to be different than them. We're not trying to create a mini Democrat and a mini Republican. Too often centrists are viewed as you don't stand for anything. The reality is I have some pretty strong views on a lot of different issues. The difference is I recognize other people have issues or opinions on those issues, and to be part of our party, you have to agree to speak for yours, but you also have to be willing to listen to others and find common ground where you can, disagree on those issues where you can't agree.
But you're not going to have a platform. Well, I, as a voter in Kansas, won't know what you stand for.
No, we will have a platform. I mean, to be honest with you, I've never created a party.
Well, your writings say you won't have a platform.
Well, no, it says we don't have one yet. I don't know. I mean, we may have said that. I've not created a party before. We're
well, what have you been waiting for?
Yeah, I know. And so we didn't know. We had a draft platform, and we don't know, well, do you get the party, then the platform? Do you have a platform, then a party? We had a basic principles. We followed Eisenhower's, statement for progressive moderation in all things dealing with people, be liberal with all things dealing with economic, be conservative. That's out of Dwight Eisenhower's mouth.
But is that possible?
Yeah. Why would it not be possible? I don't understand why you can't have.
Well, if you're a liberal and you have great concerns about welfare and you want to have a massive welfare state,
there's a party for you.
The conservative in you would not want to fund all of that.
But there's a party for people that's the only issue they care about. The thing is, we have hundreds of issues facing our state, facing our country, and we get into one issue, and if I disagree with you on that, then I'm going to be against you on everything.
We're down to a minute, so let me ask you some quick questions and get some quick answers. Will you get 18,000 signatures in time? Do you have them already?
No, we don't have them yet, but we will. We have to get them by June 1st. If we don't get them this time for some reason, I think we will. We'll do it for 2020.
What offices are you going to have candidates?
We will
running
have for the state house, and then we will have to have at least one for governor, or for statewide. Probably not governor. We just have to have one statewide and get 1% to stay certified. We don't want to be a spoiler. We don't want to be somebody that ruins the already messed up gubernatorial.
Is anybody going to run for governor as a member of the party?
It's doubtful, because we're going to look at it and see, do we help, do we hurt? We don't want Chris Kobach being elected. We don't want other people. If we hurt that, we won't be part of it. We'll run for another office.
Are you going to run for anything?
Doubtful. Maybe Secretary of State. I could see doing that.
You ran that way before. You ran against Chris Kobach and lost in the primary.
Yeah.
And was that a key reason for your displeasure with the GOP?
What I found as I went around the state was there was a big vacuum there.
Got to wrap it up. Thanks very much for coming in. A pleasure to meet you. Appreciate your time.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And that was Scott Morgan with the Party of the Center. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Denidre Herbert is the managing editor of the Sentinel, a conservative website. Attorney Jim Heater is the former CEO of the Greater Kansas City Chamber. Marianne Murray Simons is a freelance writer and consultant. And Patrick Tuohy is director of municipal policy at the Show Me Institute, a free market think tank. And I must say, this looks to me like a well-informed, scintillating panel, able to discuss and debate key issues with discernment and discretion. Now let's see if I'm right. We're going to begin where our interview ended and get some of your thoughts about the proposed Party of the Center in Kansas. Right now, party enthusiasts are trying to get 18,000 valid signatures to earn a place on the 2018 ballot. As you heard, the backers of the idea hope to attract people of various ideological stripes who are unhappy with today's political atmosphere. So let's start with this. Does it strike you as a doable project or just wishful thinking? Patrick.
Well, I wish them well, but this is clearly wishful thinking. We have seen this effort in the past. Ross Perot, who, by the way, polled 20%, I think, in Kansas when he ran for president, tried to start a party. It didn't work. The Tea Party tried to become a political party. It didn't work. And the frustrating part, I spent 15 years in public opinion research. The frustrating part is that people tell you we want a third party when it's vague and abstract. But when you give them a third party with a party platform and positions, they turn out don't want it. And so it doesn't surprise me that this party has press releases but no platform.
Let me ask that same question of Mr. Heater. Is this a doable project, the creation of a third party in Kansas, or is it just wishful thinking?
Well, I seldom agree with my friend Patrick, but on this one I do agree. I think it is wishful thinking. It is interesting that in the state of Kansas you have a tendency both to independent statewide candidates. We've seen that now in at least 2 election cycles, plus this effort for a new centrist party. But I think you saw this in the interview with Scott Morgan. It's really difficult, I think, for a proposed party like this to find issues on which it disagrees with either the Democrats or the Republicans. So it has a difficult time finding a philosophical base, much less a specific platform. I don't think this goes anywhere. I do think it's possible for a party like this, or frankly for an independent candidate, to play the spoiler role that Scott Morgan said he did not want to play. I think that's possible.
Is it possible, as I discussed with Mr. Morgan, to be liberal on human concerns but conservative on economic matters?
Mike, those words don't really mean anything. They can mean whatever you want them to mean, which is why people are kind of interested. They're like, oh, that sounds great. It sounds great, but it's not realistic. What this really is people trying to raise money to maybe fund their own little think tank or their own little vanity project because they don't like what they consider the toothless hillbillies on the right and the smelly hippies on the left. This is just their latest version of we're not those people.
There's nothing wrong with think tanks, by the way.
I love think tanks. I'm a big fan.
This idea of a third party is brought about by the belief that Kansans are disillusioned by what's going on with state government. Do you think Kansans are disillusioned?
I think there is a lot of polarization. And Scott made a great point about the fact that you have to be open to other people's ideas. You can't just disagree on a single issue and not be a part of a party or feel like a part of a party. But I think a lot of Kansans do because people are so at one end or the other. So getting back to a moderate Republican base in Johnson County, for example, which many are moving toward, seems to make sense to me, and I think this may encourage that sort of movement.
If moderate Republicans are now in the Republican Party, there's no need for a third party to attract moderate Republicans.
I'm not saying they would move to another party. I'm just saying moderation is key toward success in the future for anyone who's running for office.
I can see a third party in Kansas or anywhere else working if you've got a compelling individual who is charismatic and has a great story to tell. For example, Ross Perot. But when it becomes an abstract party idea that, right, sounds good, but when you dig in, that's the problem.
Well, I think historically third parties have succeeded if they have a big idea or a big personality, and as far as I can tell, this has neither at this point.
But he made the point, Mike, that he's working on it and has, if not successful in June, till 2020 to figure it out, and I think he's just trying to gather input and guidance from others as well as involvement.
Yeah, and I would say to Neidry, if you don't have a platform, and he said they might, now the material I read that he forwarded to me indicated there would not be a platform, at least there was no idea for one at this moment, but I guess you could develop one. But it would be hard for me as a Kansan voter to vote for somebody if I had no idea what that person actually stood for.
Especially if they find one candidate for Secretary of State or whatever statewide office they're going to throw a candidate into. It's going to have to be somebody with some name recognition or some, and it's going to be whatever that magical, mythical person thinks and believes will, I guess, be the platform. I mean, I would have trouble voting for, well, he's a sinner, party of the sinner, somebody I've never heard of. What do they believe? I don't know. It sure sounds nice. They
are Kansans disillusioned about their government?
Right, it seems very polite. Yes, but I don't think it's necessarily for the reasons that I think they want everybody to get along, and they want everybody. Kansas is a get along state, and it's uncomfortable when they don't get along. But when you really start digging down and asking people, there are people who feel very strongly about these issues, and the difference to me between the moderates and the Democrats and the conservative Republicans in Kansas is really one more of approach than, like, the moderate Republicans side an awful lot with the Democrats, but the approach is maybe a little bit, you know, they look better in suits, they have better haircuts. I mean, it's not actual policy differences. It's.
Let me wrap it up with this. Jim, would you ever vote for a third party, do you think?
Actually, very doubtful, because I believe that third parties, or for that matter, a lot of independent candidates, but certainly third parties, do play a spoiler role, and they end up actually helping elect the individual or the party that they sought out
to oppose.
In opposition to.
And Greg Orban, I guess, is going to run an independent gubernatorial campaign in Kansas. Do you have any chance, do you think?
Gosh, you know, I don't know, but basing on history, I would say no.
I guess
he has money in the campaign.
All right. Students at many Kansas City high schools and at schools across the nation staged a walkout last week to call for more gun control following the shooting deaths of 17 people at a Florida high school. Some members of Congress, including Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Bernie Sanders, attended the event in the nation's capital along with their armed bodyguards. At Park Hill High School in Kansas City, 100-plus students who walked out without administrative permission were disciplined for truancy. Students are now required to spend time in detention or attend a conference. The Kansas City Star editorial board was offended by the school's hardline position. The Star says Park Hill students should wear their activism and their truancy warnings as badges of honor. Is that right? Should they, Marianne?
We all have the peaceful right to protest. And I think these kids are scared about what's happening in their schools, and they took an opportunity, along with others across the country, to make a statement. So yes, I do think it was their right to do it. I'm disappointed that Park Hill didn't do what other school districts did. But beyond that, I talked to a number of teachers, particularly those in my family, and asked them the question of how they felt about this whole issue. They were very supportive, and they had strong concerns about the politics of this whole bring guns into the schools to better protect us, particularly in the teaching ranks. None of them, to a person, felt comfortable in being armed and felt that that was just shifting the conversation in a way that made absolutely no sense.
Students may have a right to free speech. Do they have a right to walk out of school whenever they want to?
Not whenever they want to, Mike.
Well, that's what they did.
No, that's not
yes,
true.
It is.
No, it isn't.
They walked out for this demonstration?
This did not come as a surprise. Everyone knew about the national movement. Everyone knew that this was happening.
But
and
at other
school
schools,
districts
but at
dealt
other
with it.
schools, administrators gave permission. This school district did not give permission, or this principal did not give permission.
The Kansas City Star's position is absurd. A walkout that is sanctioned is not a protest, it's a parade. If these kids want to parade around and express their views, that's great. But a protest is something else. Civil disobedience assumes you're going to act out of line, and importantly, you're willing to suffer the consequences for your action. So if these kids want to wear their truancy as a badge, it is because they stepped up and did something that authority didn't approve. But this kumbaya, everybody let's walk out, those aren't protests. Those are parades, and what we're finding out is a lot of times the students who are at odds with this parade movement are either dismissed or censured. But this is a view, this is a policy that is very, very difficult, and I'm frustrated that people like at the Star and elsewhere assume that, well, gun controls and guns in schools is really very easy, and we can just solve it with the snap of a finger.
Is it possible, Denidri, that the Park Hill administration saw this as a political statement? Yeah, I mean, it pretty much is what the Democratic Party stands for.
I don't know if it was a political statement, but beyond that, what the administration did was the exact right thing to do. You cannot just say, okay, this time go ahead, because there are plenty of students, I mean, we all went to high school, there were plenty of students, flunkies, dropouts, who wanted to leave all the time, and there are consequences to those actions. If you allow the students to get away scot-free for doing it this time, you have to allow it for a pro-life march, for any kind of march. Whatever the political speech of the day is, you have to allow it, and then how are those kids getting educated? I mean, there is some value to the experience, but if you're doing that experience every day and not learning how to read or count change back, there's a problem.
As a longtime civic leader, Jim, how do you react to this?
Well, first of all, I applaud the young people of this country for not only speaking out.
Well, no, we're not talking about the young people of this country. We're talking about Park Hill High School.
Specifically, I applaud them for doing what they thought was right. I don't think it was a partisan issue. I think they avoided partisan politics. They acted on an issue that's important to their school, to them personally, and to our country. And they, in effect, voted with their feet by walking out. Now, if the Park Hill administration seeks to punish that for truancy, then that is their prerogative as well. But I think the students did the right thing, and I'm proud of it.
Well, what if a lot of students who are concerned about abortion at Park Hill decide to walk out? Should that be approved as well?
I think we cross that bridge or any similar bridges when we come to them.
But don't you set that precedent when you say, hey, it's okay to walk out because you're concerned about gun control issues, but it's not okay to walk out for any public policy?
I don't, and I think one of the reasons you don't set that precedent is this particular issue is the one that affects them and their school life very directly, guns in schools. It
was 17 minutes. And I think 17 minutes well spent.
Well, maybe they can take 17 minutes out of every class and go outside, kind of like recess.
I think the point is, if people want to express their views, absolutely fine, but sanctioning it and having school administrators in on it isn't a protest.
Could have been done in the classroom, could it not?
It could have been done after school. It could have been done any other way.
All right. In Kansas, where never is there a problem, a new report commissioned by legislators says the state needs to increase school funding by as much as $2 billion. Apparently, many lawmakers were taken aback, expecting a more moderate result from the study. The new report, coupled with continuing demands from the state Supreme Court for increased funding, suggests state officials will have to consider tax increases or budget cuts, or simply ignoring the study's results and the High Court's demands. So, Denidri, what do you think is going to happen now as a result of all this?
I have no idea. I don't know how they can get to 63 and 21 in both chambers and then the governor's signature, or just allowing whatever they decide to become law on that. What the study suggested, I made the unfortunate decision to read it, $2.1 billion to bring graduations up to 95% graduation. It's ridiculous. I mean,
is there any state in the country where high school graduation is 95%?
It's probably an impractical goal. I hate to say that, but it's probably impractical, and it's certainly impractical the idea that if we just throw $2 billion more, that'll fix it, with very little in the study about how to use the money to begin with.
In fact, the study says, the seventh finding says, it's not just a matter of how much you spend, it's a matter of how you spend it.
But then it doesn't really say.
No,
That's
exactly,
the point.
Which is the entire problem, is how do we spend the money we're already collecting? And we're collecting a lot of it in Kansas. And the other thing is, what does graduation mean? I think in 2015 or 17, a minority of 10th grade students were at reading level. But if they graduate, is that good enough, or do they have to graduate actually being able to do what we expect a senior to do? So it's a soft measure,
Right.
and I think Denise's
nothing.
right. I'm fascinated. I'd be interested to hear what the Party of the Center says about this issue in their
Right.
platform.
It'll be in the platform. Mary Ann, as I understand it, this study was brought about because of Republicans who thought they would get a report that says, hey, you're spending enough money on education now, or you don't need to spend more than several $100 million more. And then they got the report and don't know exactly what to do with it.
And $200,000 later, they're trying to answer that question. There is a more moderate group in the legislature. They're trying to figure out amongst themselves what it is that they come up with. I agree with you completely. $2 billion is never going to happen. Think about the property tax increase or whatever else would have to be needed to fund that. None of us can afford to do that, and we all understand that. 95% graduation rate probably is not the measure we need to be looking at. It is an adequate education for children in the state of Kansas.
Let me ask you, a Harvard-trained lawyer, a lawyerly question. There was some thought that maybe the legislature could meet with the attorneys for the 4 school districts who are responsible for the continuing lawsuit and find some way to placate the 4 districts and end the problem. Do you see any likelihood of that scenario happening?
I think that will be difficult. I won't say that the problem is intractable. Very few problems are intractable, but I think this one bumps up against that word. I think the issues are so serious and so deep, and they involve funding and a host of other kinds of problems that the state of Kansas, in terms of its educational system at all levels, has been getting into for the last at least 5 or 6 years. I think it'd be difficult to get that resolution.
Jim, there seems to be the implication in the report that spending more money on education guarantees enhanced student performances. Do you think that's
There
true?
may be a suggestion in the report, and if that's the suggestion of the report, I disagree with it. Money will not necessarily fix the problem, although money is going to be necessary, a lot of money, and Kansas needs to fix the problem. You know, over the years, education has been the key to Kansas as a state, whether it's pre-K through senior high school, or whether it's junior colleges, or whether it's higher education. And Kansas has really lost a lot of that in the last several years, and it needs to get back to it. It needs to find the answer to this problem.
And our new governor is saying he sees this as a priority, and he really wants to work with the legislature to make it happen. The problem is we have elections upcoming, and everyone is really nervous about putting their neck on the line related to any kind of discussion of a tax increase.
And the problem is also the state Supreme Court, because the legislature may take action, may find, and they're going to have to, suggest how much more money they're going to spend on education. But there's anything but a guarantee that the state Supreme Court will say, yeah, we buy that.
We're getting to the point where the proponents for more education spending are making this into an absurd exercise, and they will probably lose any credibility they have, and the legislature will just say, we can't make you happy. There is absolutely no incentive for the school districts to stand down. We can't make the Supreme Court happy, so this is what we have to do, because the alternative, as Mary talked about, the property taxes are just unfathomable.
And the income tax was just
Right.
increased this year, or last year recently, and I doubt people are going to tolerate yet another income tax hike, or legislators be willing to impose one. Well, now we're going to head to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes have 30 seconds each to elevate or vitiate people and events in the news, and we start with Mr. Heater.
Mike, I'd like to toast the board and leadership of Operation Breakthrough in Kansas City, Missouri. Most Kansas Citians know about Operation Breakthrough, located at 31st and Troost in the heart of our urban core. Operation Breakthrough serves the poorest of the poor children in our community, and it does an extraordinary amount of good. Sister Berta, Sister Carita were visionaries who were far ahead of their time. Operation Breakthrough has recently been toasted nationally for the work it does in preschool education. They recently announced a $17 million capital campaign to expand across the street, literally building a bridge from the east side of Truth to the west side of Truth. Important physically and important symbolically. They're well on their way to succeeding in that, and congratulations to them.
A toast to the Missouri General Assembly for the several reform measures they have taken up regarding municipal economic development policy, specifically TIF. Kansas City and St. Louis have proven time and again they are unwilling or unable to stop handing money intended for schools to wealthy developers. So here's hoping the legislature can do it for them.
Denidre.
This is a toast of an epic roast. If you happen to be driving past, it's a toast of a roast of Kansas football. If you happen to be driving on I-70 between Kansas City and Lawrence for 24 hours, there was a billboard up that said "Save Kansas Football" with a quote that said it's the most incompetent thing in Kansas sports. As a K-State fan, I think the whole thing is hilarious. Yay. But more importantly, it is a testament to how much people in Kansas care about their universities. So.
Now another K-State fan, Marianne.
Yes, I have a toast for the federal court for making the logical decision to release Syed Jamal of Lawrence from jail, who is awaiting a decision from immigration authorities about his potential deportation back to Bangladesh, where he says his life would be threatened were he to return. I really think that the community coming together with Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins and others to raise discussion about this, raise awareness of this issue, really well placed their activism, and I'm very proud of what has happened.
And finally, the American Liberal Council is introducing a new website titled Never Trump Dating. The idea is to offer dating options to those opposed to what the council terms the corrupt, morally bankrupt administration in power. The website's headline is "A Safe Space Where All Liberals Are Welcome." And as liberals are prone to say, there is nothing like openness, diversity, and tolerance. And that is Ruckus for this week. We're back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.